Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
He's in the building!
Drink the moment. Drink it.
I said empty your mind.
Coquettish and coy. Ow. Ow.
What?
And there's people that are dying.
The wickedly talented.
More than great. It was historic.
Crack is
What?
Oh, good for you.
I have to apologize.
One of the hottest.
Hello, and welcome back to The Reheat, a podcast that re-examines the spiciest celebrity news and scandals of yesteryear and asks how would we react to the same events if they transpired today. I'm your co-host, Sadaf Hassan.
And I'm Sarah Sahakian. And this week, we're returning for another episode on our favorite dysfunctional family, the Windsors. This week, we will be discussing a cable TV star turned princess, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Sadaf, what are your thoughts on Meghan Markle? Did you know of her before she became involved with Prince Harry? I mean, maybe you probably knew her face from Suits, but did you know who she was? Are you a fan of hers?
I only knew her from Suits, and because she was kind of a thing in Toronto, right? Like, we get so excited when we have an A-list, B-list, C-list star. And so I remember that she was fine on Suits. She was cute. I didn't love Suits. I think I got through about a season and that's it. Yeah. So I didn't have much else to go on, but when she got together with Harry, I thought it was such a great, cute combo. I don't know. I kind of fell for the whole love story like so many other people did. And I remember I was working at the National Post at the time when the news broke that they were together, and it was really fun to be in a newsroom at the time because I remember they would send us out to like go find her. People just wanted a photo, right? Like I remember when there were rumors that Harry was visiting her and everybody went nuts. Like, we got to get a photo. And they had editors and reporters like camping out outside her house because, of course, we knew where she lived. It became a huge frenzy in Toronto. That's what I always go back to, and that's what I always think of. That's how I felt in the early days.
Did you get a picture of her? Did you succeed?
God,
like you
no,
specifically?
Sarah.
Okay.
God, no. Of course not.
I don't have good reflexes. If my editor told me you have to go get a picture for this story, I would just quit. I'd be like on the spot. I'd be like, I can't do it. Obviously, my job is done here.
I think I did say something like, I doubt this will happen. Because it was, Sarah, it was like swarms, you know, we weren't the only newsroom with this idea. So she definitely was just not leaving her house, which I think she even said later, like she and Harry would just camp out in the house. And I'm like, I get it. I don't blame you.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so before we get too far into this episode, I just want to let everyone know that for many, many reasons, Meghan Markle has gotten embroiled in too many scandals for us to tackle all of them, right? We just can't go into detail about all of these scandals. It's not feasible in one episode. It wouldn't even be feasible in 5 episodes. So we are in no way blaming her. Many of these scandals are completely ridiculous, but it means we don't have time to explore every notable story ever associated with the Duchess of Sussex. So if there's a tidbit that we didn't get to that is your favorite tidbit or something that really makes you angry that someone did to Meghan that we just don't have time to talk about, I'm really sorry. Please get at us on social media. We can talk about it. Slide into my DMs. I'm happy to discuss this with literally anyone. If you need to get your feelings out about this story, I'm happy to do it. I'm just saying this cannot be all things for all Meghan fans. And I just want to get that out of the way.
I love it. Excellent disclaimer. And Sarah will talk to you about it. She has a lot of thoughts.
Oh, I will. Like for hours. Let's meet up. Okay. Let's have a drinks night. If there is an appetite for that, I'm down. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go back to the start of Meghan's life. Meghan Markle was born on August 4th, 1981. Her mom, Rhea Ragland, was a makeup artist, and her father, Thomas Markle, was a successful director of photography and lighting director who worked on popular television series like General Hospital and Married with Children. It was a second marriage for Thomas, who was 12 years Doria's senior, and the pair split pretty quickly when Meghan was just 2 years old. Meghan's life growing up in Los Angeles was, I would say, based on what I have read, upper middle class. That's how I describe it. She attended a private girls' school called Immaculate Heart, where tuition today is around $27,000 per year. So, I mean, that's a very nice privilege. So good for her father, good for her mother. That's very nice of them. Meghan would sometimes visit her dad on set in her school uniform, being exposed to show business from a very young age. And a lot of people who end up in show business have that story of having a parent in show business and visiting them on set. I mean, everyone from Gwyneth Paltrow to Meghan Markle has a version of that story, it seems.
Yeah.
Meghan was also interested in feminist activism, even as a kid. At the age of 11, after seeing a sexist commercial for Ivory Soap, she took to action. The commercial in question basically declared, "Women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans." Meghan wrote to the company, as well as to other famous women like Hillary Clinton, requesting that they change the ad, and they changed the reference to women fighting pots and pans to people all over America were doing that, which is cool because representation matters. So I like that story.
Yeah, she was so cute in that commercial too. It obviously resurfaced after all of this stuff, but she was adorable. I love that. Little feminist Meghan.
Yeah, no, I think that it's one of those lovely little moments, and I understand why it comes up all the time. Basically, this is the story that has become her origin story, and I get it. I get it. Precocious and motivated, Meghan was also quite a good student. In fact, she earned a place at the very well-regarded Northwestern University in Chicago, where she was a double major in theater and international relations. During her university years, Meghan got an internship at an American embassy in Argentina, but instead of going into the Foreign Service for a career, she went into Hollywood, which was a slog. It was a slog, I'm going to say. Meghan's early years, based on my research, were not a fun time. For a long while, Meghan even wrote an anonymous blog called The Working Actress, where she complained about the various indignities that come from being an actress who made a living, but often had to do things she found really distasteful. So in some cases, because she, couldn't say no, she didn't have a lot of power, she described situations like, kissing actors with smelly breath and like doing work she didn't find meaningful. So, I mean, the early years were tough, but that is true for most performers. Most performers do pay their dues. Anyway, she often sort of played living props in her early years. That's how I would best describe the roles she got.
Yeah.
She played a hot FedEx delivery girl in 2011's Horrible Bosses. In that scene, Jason Sudeikis insists, "You're way too cute to be a FedEx girl," which is sexist because FedEx has excellent benefits. So obviously cute girls would want to work there too. Does he think cute girls don't need healthcare? Like, I don't understand that line.
Amen.
Meghan portrayed one of the briefcase girls on Deal or No Deal as well.
Yeah.
Okay, anytime I think of Deal or No Deal, I can't actually remember the show. I think of the OC parody of it, Briefcase or No Briefcase. And I don't even remember the OC because I didn't even watch it, but somehow saw the finale and thought that that was a relatively clever parody.
Oh my God, Sarah, this was an era in reality game show television. I remember it so well. There were many nights I would watch it with my family. I can't believe she was a briefcase girl when I realized. I mean, clearly what I'm learning is she's hot. That's what I'm getting. She's hot.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you marry into the royal family in the 21st century, your origin story, the one common denominator is there's always like a lot of hotness. Like, remember when Kate Middleton's nickname was always something like Beautiful Kate?
Right.
And then Prince William noticed her in a lingerie charity show, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
always the origin story. Like, the rags to riches or normal commoner to princess pipeline doesn't include people who are less than super smoking. Yes, you have to be very conventionally attractive, I would say. So Meghan has said of her time on Deal or No Deal, she said this in a 2025 episode of her Netflix show, Love Meghan, "I was thankful for the job, but not for how it made me feel, which was not smart." I mean, I get that. You just like open a briefcase and that's your job.
Yeah.
I don't know. Luckily, in 2011, Markle was cast as Rachel Zane on Suits. Rachel was a smart paralegal who would have preferred to be a lawyer, but couldn't be one because of her test-taking anxiety. And while she was the primary love interest for one of the show's leading men, Meghan was 6 on the call sheet, which is totally respectable and earns you a good living, but it doesn't really make you a star. However, it was a marked improvement from her past roles, and Meghan still seems to look back fondly on the hit show, saying of its continued popularity years after the original series wrapped, "I'm not surprised that people are rediscovering Suits because it was so well written and so well produced." I don't agree with that sentiment, but I think it's very gracious.
It was not well written. It was a typical USA Network show, but here's the interesting thing. People loved it. They loved it. And even now that it's been brought back, I believe it was brought back on Netflix for a time,
Yeah.
maybe not in Canada, right? But I think it was. She's right. The rediscovery has been insane. People are obsessed with this show. Now they have a remake version. I think they're making like a sequel version. It's wild.
How does anyone get past the incredibly flawed premise? If you have a law firm that only takes people from one law school, why is it the third best law school in America? Why is it like those Stanford and Yale kids are too good for us? But anybody who went to Columbia, not good enough. Only Harvard, only number 3. We are number 3. I don't understand. Like, it makes no sense.
I didn't even remember that, Sarah. I just would get so frustrated because it took so long for Mike to just say, I haven't been to law school, to Harvey, hot Harvey. That's all I remember. If you don't know the shtick of Suits, the whole point is this guy comes along. He doesn't have an actual law degree, but he kind of scams his way into the law firm, and he's really good at it. It's very house-like, even though he's never studied law. Or maybe he did study law, but I can't remember, Sarah.
I think it's Goodwill Hunting style, like out of interest, he studied law. He didn't go to law school.
There you go.
Because he's a criminal record, doesn't he?
Yeah. Such a great premise. Such a great premise. But I think things tended to drag on after the first season. I mean, him just having this connection with Meghan's character, it took so long for them to act on it. I couldn't do it. Not for me, but I know people love it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you really love a will they, won't they? They have that element. If you really love, I don't know, a case of not mistaken identity, but I guess hiding your identity, then it's for you. There are a lot of tropes. It's full of tropes, right? You don't have to pay attention if you want to fold laundry while watching Suits.
Exactly.
You can do that. It serves a purpose.
Yeah.
So, Sadaf, how relieved do you think Meghan must have been to finally land a role on Suits where she carried a briefcase instead of just opening one as a prop?
Nice. Oh, God, of course it must have been so phenomenal. I do think this is a smart woman. We're seeing her as a child speaking up and talking about feminist issues, and then having to be someone who just has to stand there and look pretty, hold a briefcase, or play like a delivery girl. That must have been so awful. So I'm happy for her. I mean, she got this good, decent role on this show with a couple of people who are honestly all-stars. So it was good for her. I think it was good exposure. It was a popular show. Proud of her. Proud of young Meghan.
Yeah, good for her. I'm proud of her for sticking with it. Good job. You paid your dues. That's great.
If she stayed in Hollywood, I don't know how far she would have gone, honestly, though. She could have been a Hallmark actress, maybe some Netflix movies here and there, but she never felt like someone who was going to explode into a star, but I don't know.
I mean, I think she would have worked steadily. I think worst case scenario, she does Hallmark movies, which have their place. Best case scenario, she becomes someone like Sarah Shahai, who is always doing something. And I would say Sarah Shahai is like a solid C-list celebrity, right? Where she's always doing something. It's usually fairly high quality, but she shows up to play the hot, capable woman who doesn't have much dimension.
That's such a good comparison, Sarah. How did you pull that out of your ass? That is so good.
I think a lot about Sarah Shahai. Like, I think a lot about her.
This is why we're friends. Because she's very good. And she always gets slotted into these random hot roles. You're exactly right.
But you know what? She actually is an underrated actress because Sex Life was not a good show. But she showed a completely different side of herself. She's very vulnerable. That character has a lot of emotion. She's very layered. So I actually think Sarah Shahai could do more than Hollywood has allowed her to do. But you know what? She still has a great life.
Yeah. I mean, I also hate to be that person to bring this up, but these are both women of color, so people probably don't know what the hell to do with them.
And that's the thing. Like with Sarah Shahai, only in Sex Life, because I think that part was basically written around her, did they allow her to play who she is. Where Sarah Shahai, I think, like a lot of biracial people, suffers from this thing in Hollywood where they feel like they can't cast her as a racist ethnic stereotype, but they also can't cast her as a white girl. But in like literally in Sex Life, part of her backstory is her dad is Persian and her mom is white, right? She gets to play who she is, which is wonderful. And literally, it's so easy on a network TV show. You could just do that for her, right? You could just she could always play who she is. But I feel like network TV likes clear-cut archetypes.
Exactly.
And so that's why she can't work. Anyway, we could do a whole episode just on Sarah Shahai, but that was, I think, a worthwhile aside. Anyway, Meghan relocated to Toronto to shoot the series, taking her away from her former partner and husband of 3 years, Trevor Engelson, for much of the shooting schedule. When the couple divorced in 2014, Meghan thrived in her Toronto life. She was a top Toronto single girl. This is Carrie Bradshaw for Toronto. She definitely was able to make friends and go to events. So Suits aired on cable rather than network TV, and so that didn't make Meghan a household name by any stretch of the imagination at the time. But she was kind of becoming an it girl in Toronto. Tina Brown, the wittiest woman alive, in the Bell's Papers, basically puts it like this. She describes Toronto as a major city and extremely diverse and cosmopolitan, but also provincial.
I can never get over that.
But I think
What
she
a
nails it.
description. God, Tina Brown, for as complicated and problematic at times as this woman has been, we love her. We love her.
I know, just goddess. Anyway,
Yeah.
because it was a bit provincial, right? Like, Toronto's not that much smaller than LA. It's exceedingly diverse. You have tons of educated people who are very sophisticated, travel the world. But as a city, we get a little starstruck. Anyone who's seen Toronto at TIFF knows we're a city full of cinephiles who also like ourselves a celebrity, right? So Meghan wasn't a dime a dozen here. In LA, she would have been a dime a dozen. She would have just been a generic, C or D-list celebrity. Here, she was a somebody. So she was able to shine bright in her adopted city. She and her Suits castmates hung out with each other frequently, sometimes even for cozy cottage weekends, which is cute. Other Toronto luminaries also embraced Meghan, including handsome celebrity chef Corey Vitello, who was once named one of Hello Magazine's most beautiful Canadians. Corey and Meghan dated seriously for a couple of years, but broke up when it became apparent that she was ready to settle down. So that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
It was perhaps Meghan's Toronto friendships, however, that made more of an impact on her life than the romances she had while living in the Six. Her most influential friendship came in the form of her bond with Canadian influencer and stylist Jessica Mulroney, then wife of Ben Mulroney, whose father had been Prime Minister of Canada. The pair attended yoga and Pilates classes together and went out for meals the way friends do. They also attended plenty of high-profile parties. They were kind of socialites together. Tina Brown suggests Jessica and Meghan upped each other's wattage. So this is a symbiotic relationship by appearing at events together, and they also appeared on each other's social media feeds, right? So I think that was a really important part of helping both of them become higher profile. Tina Brown also thinks that Meghan learned a lot from Jessica about the influencer space, and that really helped her elevate herself and learn just how to sort of showcase your chic life. I'm not saying that Meghan wasn't chic before, but there is a difference between being chic and knowing how to showcase your chic life, right?
Yeah.
And Jessica, as problematic as she is, and we actually don't have time to get into everything that happened, she came under fire for some very inappropriate things she said to another Canadian influencer, Sasha Exeter. These comments were definitely racist, and she and Ben Mulroney, her husband, are now divorced. I'm not saying it has anything to do with what she said to Sasha Exeter. I have no intel on that whatsoever. We don't have time to get into Jessica today because there's too much to say about actual Meghan. She and Meghan no longer appear to be friends. But it does seem like at the beginning, their relationship, whether they actually liked each other, was mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
So, Sadaf, do you think Jessica and Meghan were ever genuinely friends, or was the relationship more shrewd and strategic? Because it definitely paid off in terms of strategy.
Yeah. No, I think it was genuine because let's face it, when they started off, Meghan wasn't really a big thing, right? I don't know what that would have done for Jessica to that degree, because Jessica, I'm sure, was also friends with some other mid-level TV people. Jessica certainly had a bigger star locally, if we look at it that way. But I think once it got to the wedding, I didn't realize how close they were. Here's what I'm always fascinated by. What is their current state? Because, it seems like they're not friends anymore because they don't appear together. However, when Jessica was involved in this previous turmoil with the Sasha thing, and I have to assume, I'll speak personally, the woman seems chaotic and very problematic just generally. I feel like Meghan must have been aware of that. How can you not be? And so I've always been fascinated that they stayed friends. And then the Sasha thing happens. It seems like I'm just guessing. I could be totally wrong. Maybe Meghan got pissed, ended it logically, or they just became low-key friends. Maybe once in a while they get on the phone or something. But I don't know. I feel like when they split, that was a PR choice for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a PR choice. I don't know how genuine the friendship ever was. I don't think either of them would ever have admitted it, but I
Yeah.
do think that sometimes it's like the friendship version of a situationship. You happen to be in Toronto, you make friends with influencers there. The fact that Jessica was in the wedding and so were her kids, well, Jessica wasn't technically in the wedding, but that her kids were in the wedding.
She was all over it though.
Yeah, she was trying to have her Pippa moment, which
Yeah.
yeah. That outfit, that was strategically designed. The woman's a stylist. She knew what she was doing. But I think the fact that the kids were in the wedding doesn't necessarily mean they were ever really best friends or even anything close to it. Because also, when you're thinking about who should be in your wedding party and you're getting married and the palace has to approve your little tiny bridesmaids, you got to pick people who are appropriate. And I'm sorry, but you get good PR from picking the grandchildren
Yeah.
of a former prime minister of a Commonwealth country who Brian Mulroney, I mean, I was never a huge Brian Mulroney fan, but after the country became far more conservative than it is now, at least the Conservatives became more conservative, he's had kind of his legacy has actually not been bad for Canadian prime ministers.
Yeah.
So he had pretty good PR. He wasn't really polarizing. People didn't really seem to hate him as much as, say, like a Stephen Harper. So he's a pretty good choice. His grandchildren are a pretty good way to show your respect for the Commonwealth, as well as to show that, Meghan always had the kind of pedigree of somebody who could marry into the royal family. I think it was always strategic, whether she came up with this or the palace did or everyone thought this is a great idea.
Wow.
We're all on board. I think the messaging is this woman was always of the sort who would marry into it. She's even more Canadian than American because look, these little Canadian kids, right? Because people underestimate how much British people, there was a lot of racism, but people underestimate how much British people hated her for being American,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my God, that's so true. I feel like it was very well orchestrated. I mean, it's kind of genius because, yeah, I would tend to forget that Meghan is not from Toronto.
I know.
She's not Canadian, but it feels like she is. And God knows we treat her like she's one of us. And this was such a smart move in that way. Because, oh my God, the other thing is, listen, the world is covering this wedding anyway. But again, I was in a newsroom at the time. We went nuts doing the coverage for this wedding because the Mulroneys were all over it.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, she invited so many Canadian locals to the wedding, including a lot of the Suits cast, some of whom are from Toronto. So I remember that. It's so clever. It's so clever.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's very, very, very shrewd. Anyway, returning to, because I feel like we're getting ahead of ourselves, returning to Meghan's single life in Toronto. During her time on Suits, Meghan also founded The Tig, a lifestyle blog that covered everything from fashion to friendship. And it was bizarrely named for a type of wine she liked, Tignanolo. I can't pronounce it properly.
Sarah,
yes.
This is wild because for all these years I've wondered why the hell she named it the Tig, and I'm only realizing now that you're telling me, and the answer is awful.
It's a really weird name. I don't understand why.
Hell?
And it's something you couldn't do today because now we've become more aware of the importance of not creating spaces that really trigger people who are in recovery. And so I think that actually it wouldn't have garnered her as much praise as it did back then because it was a feminist website, but it's named after a brand of wine, right?
Yeah.
Not super inclusive because there are a lot of women in recovery, right? So anyway.
I'm seeing it's her favorite red wine. Okay, Meghan, I'm confused. Maybe she was hoping for a sponsorship or something because that's wild.
I don't know. I'm not sure what
God.
the strategy was. It's very weird.
Suddenly I'm understanding how she was friends with Jessica. Sorry.
So according to Tina Brown, Meghan was obsessed with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop and was hoping her lifestyle brand could kind of emulate that in a way. But that wasn't to be. It's not to be, not because the Tig was bad. Actually, the Tig received a fair amount of praise and she got interviews with people like Emmy Rossum. It had some good content. But she just wasn't as famous as Gwyneth. So she wasn't going to be able to catapult the Tig to the level of Goop, right? It just wasn't going to work. You have to be famous to make Goop happen. Anyway, Meghan managed to get some acclaim for it. So I'm not saying it was a completely worthless enterprise. And actually, I enjoyed the Tig back in the day. It was kind of an object of fascination. My friends and I would talk about it. And it definitely was entertaining. It was just as entertaining as a lot of other women's websites I read at that time religiously. Meghan could frequently be seen in Toronto's Soho House, which was one of her Toronto haunts. She was a member there, and that was where she did a lot of her writing for the TIG. The TIG was sadly shut down when she became a royal, so you can't read it easily, but there's still some content out there if you're committed and you search. So this brings us to July of 2016. Meghan Markle had a blind date with Prince Harry at London's Soho House. It was destiny. Royal biographer Angela Levine is convinced that Meghan strategically wore a Bluebell fragrance to remind Harry of his mother, Princess Diana, who typically wore a Bluebell fragrance. If true, this would be at odds with Meghan's assertion that she didn't really know much about the House of Windsor before marrying Harry. But not everyone thinks that.
I mean, it's also a little chilling. I don't know if I want to smell like my soon-to-be husband's mom on my wedding day.
It's smart, though.
You know?
That kid totally has mommy issues. Like, it's very apparent that Harry does. And I'm just saying, if you were just a shrewd genius and you're just thinking like the way a psychopath thinks, because if she did this is psychopathic, right? On purpose.
This is the same woman who named her blog The Tig after a random ass wine.
I don't know. But that's why I don't think there's strategy there, because what's the strategy of naming your blog after wine?
I agree. Or she has like a really good PR team. I don't know who she was working with at the time, but it's interesting.
I don't know. To me, this is very similar to a similarly sexist origin story for Kate Middleton, which is that she decided to go to St. Andrews basically to stalk William and make him fall in love with her. I think it's similar vibe, this social climbing idea, right? Kate was at the time, and I know this is how retrograde the House of Windsor is and how retrograde the institution monarchy is, just because her family hadn't always been rich and didn't have a title. She was seen as an atypical choice. She was a commoner, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how deep classism goes. Like her mom, who was rich by the time Kate met William, had been born in public housing, right? And then you get this heightened version of the discrimination and the sexism because Meghan is Black and she's also American, which is a big piece that I think people don't talk about often enough, right? Like when you have an American marrying a royal, look up what happened to Wallace Simpson if you don't believe me. She was a Nazi, however, so she was also a bad person. Both things can be true. Both things can be true.
She was a Nazi, however. well also, Meghan was divorced. She was divorced. She had so much against her, you know? It's nuts. It's ludicrous. But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scrutiny would have been worse had she been trying to marry William, because the idea that they would ever have a British queen who hadn't been born in Britain, I think is just like a bridge too far for them. I don't think they would ever get to that point of accepting that. So anyway, there are many theories about who introduced Harry and Meghan, but my girl Tina Brown says it was Canadian-born Soho House executive and Meghan confidant Marcus Anderson. So we're going with that at the reheat. That is officially sanctioned story. We believe that. The pair also had their first date at London Soho House, as I mentioned before, so it kind of makes sense. In their post-engagement interview with the BBC, Meghan claimed that she didn't know much about Harry at all when she met him, right? I'm going to quote that. She said, "It's so interesting because we talk about it now. And even then, you know, because I'm from the States, you don't grow up with the same understanding of the royal family. While I now understand very clearly there is a global interest there, I don't know much about him. And so the only thing that I had asked her," I guess she means the friend who was setting her up, but I still think it was this dude. "So the only thing that I had asked her when she wanted to set us up, I had one question. I said, well, is he nice? Okay, I don't believe this. I actually this is some of the best acting Meghan has ever done. Obviously, you know about him. That doesn't mean you were a psycho and wore his mom's perfume, but I think she did. And then she basically says, because if he wasn't kind, then it didn't seem like it would make sense. I'm sorry. We would all go on a date with the prince, even if he wasn't kind, just to say you did. Say you did. Okay.
Please.
We would all do it. I'm not judging. And I know you have to create an origin story. Like, if you go on, it's like the people go on The Bachelor who are like, YOLO, and I want followers, and then they actually fall in love, because sometimes they do. And then they have to pretend that they didn't go on for followers. And then they were like, no, I just wanted to meet a nice guy. It's like, obviously you didn't, right? And this is what it reminds me of. It's like how they have to retcon the origin story when they win The Bachelor.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. I just hate it. I hate it. I'm rolling my eyes. But okay, Meghan.
She's better than this. And I think there's a way you can present it a little bit more honestly without lying. You can just say, a friend set us up. We were in London. I thought that sounds like fun, right? Obviously, I'd heard about him in the press, but I didn't know that much. And I thought, okay, seems like a cool guy. Let's have one drink. What can it hurt? Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's probably what she was thinking. I'm not saying that she was like this crazy strategist who somehow thought that she could convince him to fall in love with her over one drink. Like, that's why I also
way.
Yeah. I also hate the Kate Middleton story about like she went to St. Andrews to make him marry her. I'm like, obviously she wasn't delusional enough to think that she could certainly achieve that, right? And nor was Meghan
That's
here.
the thing. Isn't that the thing that I think people forget? It's like it's still such a far-fetched concept that you would actually fall in love and
Yeah.
marry the prince. Like, I don't think any of these women are like, I'm going to manage to do this. I agree. She must have for sure just been like, this could be a cool date, maybe a fun story after.
Yeah.
And then turns out they hit it off.
Because can you imagine telling your girlfriends, so I could have gone on a date with Prince Harry and I said no. They would kill you. They would murder you dead. So
who would
obviously,
say no?
No one would say no. No one would say no. Like, this
Also,
is
Sarah, what world would either you or me, let's say we're talking to each other after this prospect comes up, we're like, well, is he nice? Because if he's not nice, I'm not going to go. Fuck off.
No. With setting friends up is much more like Charlotte on And Just Like That, when she sets Carrie up with her old boss who's been married like 4 times. And then Carrie's like, why would you do that? He's been married 4 times. And she's like, yes, but he has a plane. That's my vibe. I set my friends up. I want to set them all up with rich, fabulous men, and we'll go on rich, fabulous vacations. Like, I mean, you're paying, obviously, but that's your thank you gift for me for this setup.
Thank you, Sarah. Correct. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's no way I think that the friends had this conversation. Like, yes, in the long term, if you're going to commit, you want to know if someone's kind. But also, have you not heard of love bombing Meghan Markle? You can't tell from one date if someone's kind. And your friend probably, unless they're like related to him, doesn't know if he's a secret covert narcissist either. So this is just disingenuous.
I love it. I love the breakdown, Sarah. I totally agree.
Yeah. So do we think how much familiarity do we really think that she had with Harry? Do we think that she was the psychotic lady who purposefully wore his mom's perfume? Or do we think that she really knew absolutely nothing? Like, where do we think the truth lies? And we talked about it a bit, but let's give it a definitive answer.
I think it's got to be somewhere in the middle. Listen,
Yeah.
I don't think American education is really up to snuff. Infamously, just this past week, there was a couple on TikTok, an American couple. I don't know if you saw this, Sarah. They came for a visit in Canada, had no idea that Canada is a country separate from the US. It is not a state. Also had no idea that we use the metric system, didn't know what the metric system was, didn't know we use different currency. They were completely perplexed, and they said, we never learned about this at school. Now, I don't believe that they are the only Americans out there who doesn't realize Canada is not the 51st state. So if you have that already, and you have a very limited, we know it to be true that the US does not go deep on history.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. There's so much that they block out that they don't know. They don't know about the Oklahoma massacre. They don't know about so many things. So why would they know too much about Prince Harry? Whereas Canada is disgustingly obsessed with the royals, right? We're part of the Commonwealth. It is how it goes. So I can believe that she didn't know that much. However, if you know you're going on a date with Prince Harry, you're going to Google the man. You're going to Google him.
You're going to Google anyone. You're going to Google a pediatric nurse you meet on Tinder. So why aren't you going to Google Prince Harry? Also, there's no way Jessica Mulroney is not interested in the royal family. And if they were really friends, I'm sure it came up. Also, like, these women were constantly being covered in Hello Canada. So are the royals. You pick up your Hello Canada, you read the coverage about yourself or your friends, and then you see the royals in there. So I think that having lived in Canada and being a smart, educated person, I believe she probably knew a medium amount. Like, I don't think she was an expert by any means. Obviously, Kate Middleton, just having grown up in the UK, would have known more because you watched the Queen's address on Christmas. You know, her parents were big royalists and watched Charles marry Diana when the mom was pregnant with Kate, right? So I don't think she was that level of familiar with it. But any educated person in the world can tell you about the House of Windsor, whether they're a fan of it or not. They know what it is, right? It's a famous institution. So anyway.
I think if you think about it from Princess Diana is a global name, right? And he is one of her sons. So you could even just leave it at that. Meghan's, she's crafting a tale here.
Yeah. And I don't know if the palace wanted her to do that. Part of me also thinks that she convinced herself this was true. Have you ever convinced yourself of something you know isn't true?
Yeah.
I have done that.
Yes, many times. And I fully believe she did. It sounds to me like even what they've shared, that it was like a little bit of a fairy tale romance. I don't know why she needed to add all this detail. If you're telling the story to the public constantly, I'm going to start to believe it at some point if I'm telling it.
Especially because you're an actor, right? And so you're like, okay, I have to sell this. I do think on some level you convince yourself. So I think at this point she believes this story. I just don't think it is true. If we had a time machine and we were Meghan's friend, I don't think that's the conversation. I don't think it's, is he kind? I think it's like, okay, just tell me about him. So maybe she said that, like, what's he like?
Exactly.
But I doubt it was just like, I don't care that he's a rich, handsome prince. I won't even have a single drink with him if he's not kind. Like, okay.
Yeah, please. Speaking of Hallmark, like, get out of here.
Yes. Okay. Okay, Meghan. And we're back. So Harry and Meghan were able to date secretly for a few months before the press got wind of their romance. Harry traveled to Toronto to visit Meghan, who was shooting Suits in the city, and he stayed at her rented home in Midtown, the home that Sadaf was literally paid to stalk at one point in her career. Said Meghan of their courtship, I don't think that I would call it a whirlwind in terms of our relationship. Obviously, there have been many layers attached to how public it has become after we had a good 5-6 months almost with just privacy, which was amazing. This is a very confusing sentence. But anyway, basically what she's saying is it's not a whirlwind romance, which for two people in their 30s, you just don't have to date as long. I do believe that. You've lived. The woman had been married before. Harry had been in long-term relationships. So if anyone's saying they were moving too quickly, I wouldn't say that that's true.
Yeah.
And they also had some time. She's kind of exaggerating how much time they had before it became public, but also maybe she just doesn't remember. Sometimes it feels like you've been with someone longer than you have. My husband literally can't remember how long we've been married. So it's like, this is fine. But that's men. Men don't ever know how long you've been married. Men don't know how old they are. So, like, if you ask them how old they are, most men don't know.
In conclusion, as we say every week, men are dumb.
So when the press did find out about Harry and Meghan, things were wild. In the early days of their relationship, one Daily Mail headline read, Harry's new girlfriend is almost straight out of Compton. Vile. The article referred to...
so bad. I never knew that.
It was so racist. The coverage was disgusting. The article referred to the home of Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, as gang-scarred. It is a very nice neighborhood, but even if it were a place where gang violence happens, how does that make Meghan a less valuable human or her mother a less valuable human? So there's also layers of classism baked in here, racism, classism. It's just gross all over. And Tina Brown also reported in the Palace Papers that Doria Ragland's neighborhood is quite lovely. So there was not even a shred of truth to these claims. They were just going with what they thought would sell, and that was racism. And that's a very sad reflection of society. Anyway, Prince Harry wasn't having it. In November of 2016, the House of Windsor did something unprecedented when Harry authorized an official statement decrying the quote, racial overtones of the press coverage about Meghan. So, Sadaf, do you think the press coverage of Meghan would be any less racist almost a decade later if Prince George ever dates a racialized person? Or Prince Louis or Princess Charlotte? Do we think the media will handle it more appropriately? Or is the UK media destined never to learn from their mistakes?
Oh my God, I wish I could be more optimistic, but I think they're destined to never learn. The UK media is infamously horrific and such savages. And the way they have torn this poor woman apart, I don't think that I could have withstood it personally. I believe it was on the Oprah interview, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, where she said she thought about killing herself due to the press. They were so relentless. It was better here in Canada, but she was still being held up to this insane constant critique. And it was almost entirely just because she's a Black woman. I was honestly kind of appalled, and I shouldn't have been, because we know how the media is there. Them having been so hard on Princess Diana is one thing. To come after Meghan in similar and yet even more horrific ways, you'd think they would have learned after Diana, right?
No, I mean, they're really horrible. They will take anyone who marries into the royal family and just bully them mercilessly. I mean, Sarah Ferguson was constantly fat-shamed and called the Duchess of Pork. So they'll take anything about you. And so with Meghan, I think the easiest narrative they thought they could sell was a racist one, right? And it's awful. I mean, with Kate, it was that she was a social climber and it was a classist narrative, right? So they will always take whatever, I guess, they think that people see as a vulnerability about you. Yes. And this is one thing we have to emphasize is these are the tabloids, right? And so the British tabloids are notorious for catering to the worst of humanity, right? The worst of humanity.
The dredges.
Exactly. So the gross media coverage didn't destroy the couple's romance. In September of 2017, Meghan did a cover story for Vanity Fair, and she served them Taroni food in that cover story, in that interview.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Toronto really shone in this period, right?
Wow.
Toronto, what a cool city Toronto was, right? You could fall in love with your prince in Toronto. You don't need to go to Paris. Fall in love with a prince in Toronto, okay?
Honestly,
Okay.
sounds romantic.
All those teen shows like The Summer I Turned Pretty that have girls go find themselves in Paris. Like, no. Do it in Toronto, okay?
Yeah.
It's better. Okay. In this Vanity Fair cover story, Meghan Markle opined, "We're in love. I'm sure there will be a time when we will have to come forward and present ourselves and have stories to tell. But I hope what people will understand is that this is our time. This is for us. It's part of what makes it so special, that it's just ours. But we're happy. Personally, I love a great love story." And you know what? Who doesn't love a great love story?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. She sounds so corny, but
Yeah.
I get it. They're so in
Yes.
love. And even to this day, I was just looking at photos of them on the red carpet for an event this week. She looks at him with such adoration. Like, I believe this woman is deeply in love, and I believe they're deeply in love with each other. I do. I think it's true.
I think it's real love. And I think that, and I don't mean this judgmentally, I think they're both kind of corny people, right? And that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, if you're the type of corny person who genuinely loves a Nicholas Sparks novel and a Hallmark movie, that is totally fine. And you can still be smart and cool and like those things. But I'm not judging. This is not me. Like, I don't think I'd be like, it's so special. Like, I don't think I've ever said that about anyone. Anyway, I'm just saying that, like, I think these people are compatible and I think they have a similar perspective on romance. Whereas I would say one of the things that helped William and Kate find each other is they're both very practical, grounded people. I don't think they are super romantic people. I think, like, I actually do think that their relationship is real and their love is real. I'm not one of there are some doubters. I'm not. But I think they're both very practical people.
AKA boring. So boring.
I mean, yeah. So, like, but there are tons of people who go home and watch Bake Off, and that's the highlight of their week, and there is nothing wrong.
That's true. That's why domesticity scares me, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. So a mere 2 months after this Vanity Fair, Harry and Meghan announced their engagement on November 27th, 2017. Sadaf, were you surprised the relationship resulted in marriage when all of Prince Harry's previous relationships were kind of disastrous? Remember his years-long on-again, off-again relationship with Zimbabwe-born businesswoman Chelsea Davy? Remember Krista Bonus? When you read the Palace Papers, you find out they broke up basically because Harry had rage issues.
Yeah, I know, which is interesting to me because I wonder, listen, these two, and by these two I mean Harry and Meghan, have crafted such a perfect, flawless image. You often wonder, what are they not telling us? Not any relationship is perfect. I hope he doesn't still have those alleged rage issues. Yes, I was surprised because he was kind of, his whole reputation in the press was a little bit of a playboy, right? Like, he never wanted to settle down. That was the whole shtick. However, I was also really thrilled because I considered Meghan a Canadian gal. I was like, hey, he married a local. Love it. And I did fall for their whole love story. I loved the idea that he was marrying a Black woman. I thought that was fantastic. I loved that she went against everything that the royals decree as the perfect bride for you, although I'm sure they would never be satisfied with whoever that might be. I loved it. I ate it all up, Sarah. I was all over it. What about you?
I was really excited at the time. I actually wrote something that I think you helped edit for the National Post about how this was so groundbreaking. And I did the odd radio interview about it. I was so excited about the diversification of the royal family. I was foolishly a little bit more optimistic. I didn't think it would be smooth for Kate. Sorry, it's not Kate. I didn't think it would be smooth for Meghan, but I thought that it would. I thought she'd still be living in London. Like, I didn't know how badly it would go. None of us did, I think. Anyway, I was surprised because Harry, he's described in the Palace Papers as kind of being like, male Bridget Jones. That was the way he was in his 30s, where he just had these disastrous relationships and all he wanted was to get married and have kids. But every woman would kind of get to know him and then be like, eek, like, no, thank you. So I didn't know if she'd end up committing to him. I thought that maybe they'd date for a while, and once Suits was over and she could spend more time with him, she would decide, okay, not for me. And I actually don't know if if they hadn't been long distance, I don't know if she would have married him unless he miraculously got over all the rage issues that scared poor Krista off. I think that if they'd spent more time together, maybe it would be a different relationship. That's just speculation on my part. But I know that, previous girlfriends who did spend longer periods of time with him had some concerns.
Yeah, it's really interesting that that's kind of all fallen by the wayside. We don't talk about any of that anymore. Odd. But I really, really hope he doesn't have that now.
I hope so too. I mean, he was also just like kind of a jerk when he was younger. If you read Spare, he talks
Yeah.
about when he dressed up as a
Oh, God.
Nazi, and then he kind
Yeah.
of blames his friends and family for it. I'm like, you put on a Nazi costume. Like, there's no accountability.
Yeah.
Harry is just one thing I don't like about his memoir, and I know it was ghostwritten, but with his input, is he takes so little accountability. He also kind of talks about his kill count in Afghanistan without really acknowledging that he killed actual human beings, which I think is very dehumanizing and problematic.
Yeah. Okay. So I only got halfway through Spare, which, God, what an awful title. And he didn't come off great to me. And I didn't like it. And I was just like, oh, this is him? Oh, I don't love it. So again, you're reminding me, Sarah, I don't think I know Prince Harry very well, the real Prince Harry. And I wonder, what is the relationship really like behind closed doors, just knowing that?
I don't know.
But
he's
again, that's
cringe.
just speculation.
He
Yeah,
also
he
talks
is.
about how his
But then so
soul
is
is
she.
African.
Oh,
I
didn't
know.
know that.
No, it's.
Oh dear.
I mean, he's quoting
Oh.
someone who says that to him, but in his book, and he's not.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he believes it. Like the way it's
I
presented.
would not have put that in.
It's like
I
he's
would not have
co-signing
put that
it.
in. Uh-oh.
No, yeah,
Uh-oh.
like, yeah. The whole thing. I'm just thinking, if Meghan had spent more time with him in a concentrated way, I'm not sure she would have married him. That's just speculation on my part. Maybe she's like mad about this man and loves the whole package, flaws and all, and like we've all fallen in love with like cringe, flawed humans.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
We all
Oh, God,
have.
yeah.
We all
Oh.
have. It's fine. So, in true royal fashion, Harry and Meghan didn't waste any time getting married after announcing their engagement. On May 17th, 2018, they tied the knot at the historic St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. And while the day wasn't without controversy, we already discussed the conflict between Kate and Meghan over the bridesmaids' dresses in a previous episode on Kate Middleton, so we're not going to get into it here. I think we've said everything we needed to say about that. By the way, Meghan herself has made it clear Kate apologized and sent flowers. So, in my opinion, the incident is over, and the press was trying to create a rivalry between two women, which I think is really sexist. And the fact that they portrayed Meghan as the villain is also racist. And I don't want to give it any more airtime, because if you want to see Meghan's thoughts on it, you can watch the Oprah interview where she explains herself. If you want to listen to Tina Brown's thoughts, you can listen to her audiobook or read her audiobook. But yeah. You can listen to our Kate Middleton episode too. Another controversy that plagued this wedding was the fact that Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, was not in attendance. And until the last minute, it looked like he might come, but he didn't make it. He was having health issues. As Tina Brown explains, also, he was kind of being hounded by the press and was sort of kind of manipulated into doing photos that probably weren't great for the royal family, candid photos, and participated in it. But the man didn't really have any media training. He didn't really know what he was doing. I actually feel like in this case, Harry and Meghan probably should have made sure that he was somehow prepared for becoming famous overnight, and the fact that there would be photographers at his door. And I'm not saying that this makes them bad people, that they didn't prepare him. I'm just saying, like, this was a huge institutional failure. Buckingham Palace should have really had a better plan. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't feel like they needed to was Carol Middleton was like a mafiosa with that wedding, and she like made sure all of the family knew not to talk to the press. She knew that they made sure they behaved well. Like, Carol gets stuff done. Okay, she is
Wait,
like
is Carol Kate's mother?
Yes,
who's Carol?
Carol's Kate's
Okay,
mother.
got it.
So for that
Got
royal wedding, Carol had been training for this. I do think like the moment she found out her daughter was dating a prince, she was like, what is my scenario if they get married? And she had trained like you train for a marathon, and she knew how to handle her family. She got it. Okay. Because I think they had a problematic family member who'd like been busted for cocaine. Like, they were not without skeletons in their closet. She made sure everyone knew how to behave. And I think that, like, you know, because Meghan was American, she didn't really have anyone in her family like that. She had the sketchy stepsister who was constantly saying mean things about her in the press. And then she had an elderly father who didn't really know what was happening and loved his daughter, but was kind of clueless about how to behave. And so it's a really unfortunate thing. We're not going to get into too much detail about it. I just think it's sad. And to this day, Thomas hasn't met his grandchildren. And I think that that's really tragic. That he seems
like a terrible guy.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't seem like a good guy, but I do think it's really tragic that, like, they'll never, ever meet their grandparents, their grandfather, and I don't know. I do have some.
Wasn't he feeding, or was it her sister who were feeding stories about her to the press?
I think it was more the sister. I think the sister
Okay.
was more
What a
vitriolic.
family.
I think the sister was vitriolic and Thomas was just kind of like clueless, like didn't know what was happening.
I
I
was
mean,
fascinated by this, that half of Megan's family is such a train wreck. And then her mom is like this really lovely, amazing woman. And she was primarily raised by her mother,
yeah.
right? So I'm just so fascinated by that. It's so unfortunate. It's like you're already having to deal with the hell of the British people and joining the royals. And then your own family on your side at home is just coming up and also stabbing you in the back. It's awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be part of the reason why her parents' marriage didn't work out, right? They weren't married for very long. Harry and Meghan's nuptials were unlike any other royal wedding in history. They were really unique. Not only was Meghan the first racialized person to marry into the House of Windsor, but the wedding actually felt like an expression of who the couple were, which I think is quite special. A gospel choir performed Stand By Me, and while Meghan Markle's Da Vinci gown was a little bit loose, didn't fit super well, she looked stunning as the two twin sons of her good Torontonian friend Jessica Mulroney carried that train, right? So I liked how it was an expression of who they were. She had a friend from one part of her life that she met basically because she went to work in Toronto, have her kids carry the train along with his relatives. I mean, by his, I mean Harry's. She even got to invite her C-list celebrity friends from Suits, which I think is fun. Like they let
Yeah.
all these C-list American and Canadian celebrities come to the wedding because those were her work friends. And she had actually had a career. I mean, Kate Middleton hadn't really had much of a career, so I don't know if she had that many work friends to invite.
I know, and to be honest with you, what a thrill for me personally, simpleton that I am from provincial Toronto, seeing the cast of Suits show up at the wedding. I was thrilled, Sarah. I was so happy to see them.
And another interesting aspect was not only was Meghan Markle pioneering for being a Black woman who's marrying into the royal family and for being divorced, but she also was over 35, right? And so
Yeah, right.
ageism is so real for women on the dating market. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
a 36-year-old woman becoming a princess, marrying a prince, this is something that is really remarkable. And actually, I don't think we talked about this enough at the time, how this really defies the ageism of dating, right? And that was a huge victory for every woman who's ever
Yeah.
decided, I'm going to focus on my career and get married later or settle down later. Good job. And that's my favorite thing about Prince Harry is that he didn't marry a child bride. It's my favorite thing about him. I don't like that much
clearly
about him.
he was not. I agree. I will say he didn't seem to care about any of these quote unquote rules, which I appreciate. Like, again, if we go back to your infamous example of Prince Charles and Camilla, he really went for who he was in love with. And there's something to be said about that.
I think we can talk a lot about the problematic things Charles has done. But I do think on one level, even though he did cheat on their mother and their parents got divorced, after that, he was a good role model for finding someone you were compatible with, sticking with that person, and also caring more about compatibility than age, like not going for the younger woman. And so I do think in some ways he was a good relationship role model for them. And I think that they both chose partners who made sense and seemed to be compatible, both sons. I really do think that both sons found compatible partners. And I think a lot of that we know from research comes from having a parental role model who did the same thing. Or maybe they just got lucky. But I do think Charles, as much as there are a lot of problems with him, chose his second wife very well. I don't like Camilla that much, but I think that they're perfect for each other.
That is an important disclaimer. Thank you, Sarah.
Right? Like perfect together.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. On a bizarre note, Meghan and Harry also invited George and Amal Clooney to their wedding, who openly admitted to other guests that they did not know the couple at all.
Yikes.
And Oprah was in attendance too. So this is just kind of like, I guess, the shoot your shot school of wedding invitations. It's like, I've always wanted to meet George and Amal. Let's invite them.
Hey, they did show up. And also, again, this is a reminder that this is a celebrity wedding and it's a Hollywood wedding and there's PR involved. And you're going to bring the Clooneys plus Oprah because it's going to get you even more headlines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Sadaf, did you watch Harry and Meghan's wedding? If so, what were your thoughts? And did you day drink mimosas while watching it like I did?
Oh my God. Yes to both, actually. So I had a friend who was an American friend who was visiting from the States. She was only here for a weekend. And yet we camped out for brunch and we watched the whole wedding on my laptop and we day drank. We had so much endless food because we watched the whole thing and it went on for quite some. We didn't watch the whole thing, I guess, because it went on for quite some time. There was the procession afterwards. I think we didn't watch that. But Yeah, we did. And also all over Toronto, you couldn't kind of escape it because there were watch parties everywhere. Everybody was watching. Again, our people were all over this. And I'm not going to lie, I was excited to see it. I wanted to see it.
Yeah,
What about
of
you,
course.
Sarah?
Oh, I was super excited. I'll watch any royal wedding. I love that content. They are
Yeah.
really good at orchestrating those events, the royals, okay? Premium wedding planning abilities there. So I hook it up to my veins, right? The crown in
I'm
real
with
life,
you.
right?
But I agree. I didn't love her dress. I was disappointed in the dress. But I wondered if maybe that was intentional, that she chose something that was so not, I don't know, attention getting. Whereas Kate Middleton's is still one of my favorite wedding dresses of all time.
Yeah, I think she was in a really hard place because you can't do anything too similar to Kate's, which I actually think is just the perfect royal wedding dress. But you're not allowed, because you're in a religious institution. So even if you're departing with the norms, you're not supposed to show your shoulders. You can't wear anything strapless, right? And I do get that. Yeah, it's a religious institution. You're not supposed to do that.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, so I get showing respect in that way. So you need sleeves, but you can't do you can't do the kind of lace that Kate did, because then it's too reminiscent. And you don't want to do what Diana did, because that dress was a disaster. Right?
Yeah.
So then what do you have left? Something very plain and nondescript. My only complaint is I think it just needed to fit better. I think they just needed one more fitting.
Yeah. A
That's
little
the
tailoring
issue.
would have been nice.
Yeah. I understand the thought process. I just think that you're going to be a duchess. They can find you a tailor who can come.
Who was the designer, Sarah? Do you remember?
So it was Givenchy.
Right, it was Givenchy. What the heck?
I also would have picked a British fashion house, but that's just
true.
me. Or even
That's
Canadian,
odd.
like Commonwealth. I would have done that too.
Yeah. Canadian would have been a good move.
Yeah, it would have been a really good move. But I don't know. That was, I think, a strategic blunder, because she missed a chance to establish some really goodwill with the British fashion community. Kate has done a brilliant job of establishing goodwill with the whole fashion community from top to bottom. And I would have worn Jenny Peckham, because Jenny Peckham was so hot at that time, such a hot British fashion designer. So that's what I would have worn, Jenny Peckham. But she might have felt Jenny Peckham was too associated with Kate, because Kate had worn a few of her gowns.
Right.
I don't know what she's thinking. Get House of Burberry, design something for you. Vivienne Westwood. So many British fashion designers. Stella McCartney.
Stella would have been really great. Stella goes so well with Meghan's style. That's a great idea. Imagine that.
I know. And
I would have loved to see that.
It's a real missed opportunity. Anyway, well, it's time for another short break. We're back. Meghan's life after becoming a royal wasn't rosy. For a wedding gift, Harry and Meghan were gifted the Frogmore Cottage, a home on the Windsor estate. It was the Queen's present to her grandson and his bride. The sovereign grant also paid for a £2.4 million renovation of this home that redefines the word cottage. Look it up.
God.
Because I think mansion is a more accurate description.
Yeah.
And because a queen doesn't just give you one extravagant wedding gift, the couple also received a fancy new title from the now deceased monarch, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But with all that privilege comes a ton of protocols and a lot of restrictions. Not only was Meghan living in a new country where she didn't really have many friends and the press followed her every move, but she also had to learn the rules of being royal. In a 2025 interview with Emily Chang, Meghan explained why she felt, quote, inauthentic living in the royal bubble. She said, I couldn't be as vocal, and I had to wear nude pantyhose all the time. She does talk about how she knows that sounds like a silly thing to complain about, the pantyhose, but still, it's just an example of how regimented everything is.
Yeah,
exactly. The new Duchess wanted to show up, quote, organically and authentically. And then she later explains, but it's hard to do that when there's a protocol about everything, right? And there really is. I mean, they even have rules about to whom you're supposed to curtsy, right? And the royal family's mantra is never complain, never explain. So you really can't speak authentically. You can't tell the press very much. You even have to be guarded about what you tell your friends. So it's a pretty oppressive, if you think about it. If you have a personality where you like to speak candidly, it's pretty oppressive that you're expected to be politically neutral and this makes sense, they do receive the sovereign grant. They're meant to be symbols of the nation. So they're not supposed to have opinions that they can make publicly available about politics. And this is something they've all struggled with. If you look at Prince Charles's speeches from the 90s, there are a lot of times where he actually did get pretty political, and he received a lot of pushback. Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of opinions that I think would be considered as, taking a stand, and that he received pushback for that from people. A lot of people don't like that about him. So Meghan, who came from the entertainment industry where days stretch on and on, also wasn't used to the slower pace of the palace workday. She would send work emails at 5 a.m. to her staff, and there are claims that some of the staff dubbed her Duchess difficult. Now, I
God.
also hate being emailed by a boss at 5 a.m. However, toxic North American work culture is hard for those of us who've been part of it to shake. So having said that,
Oh.
palace staff are notoriously underpaid. So I think that's also part of the story. This is a case where if you're basically doing something almost as a volunteer, you're being so poorly paid and you'd be way better paid in the private sector, and your boss is emailing you at 5 a.m., that would rankle, right? Like, I would be upset. But I think this is a case of maybe she just doesn't get it. Like, I don't know. She knew how poorly paid they were. She also had as part of her email signature that her work hours weren't necessarily every other's. Is that Anne Helen Peterson thing? I think she's the person who pioneered it, where you can say, like, I'm just emailing you now because I have time. And I even do that sometimes myself. So I do not want to be judgy about Meghan. I think
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
might be a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Really. But I also understand when you are a British person and you are working a really poorly paid public service job, which is, I think, how palace staff see it, you might be upset. Like, I don't think anyone's really wrong here.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay. So, Sadaf, we've already talked about Meghan as a boss. What are your thoughts on Meghan's issue with royal protocol?
Can you imagine going from a regular life, like relatively like we live, and then having to, the nude pantyhose is a tough one for me. And then also having to curtsy to all your in-laws as you're walking down the hall to lunch or something. Like, it's so weird to me. And mind you, on top of all of this, she's giving up her career. It's just really strange, and you're more defined for who you're married to than who you are. Honestly speaking, I don't know that I could do it, because being a royal, yeah, you get a mansion, you're funded for life, there's all these great things about it, but it's also completely stripping you of who you are. I don't know that I could ever do it. I really don't. What about you, Sarah?
No, I could never do it.
Yeah.
Because we were born, because we grew up here, we know a lot about the royal family just through osmosis.
Right.
So I think we know that about ourselves. And I don't think Meghan was clueless about the royals. But I think that you don't really understand the vibe as well if you haven't been following it closely. Americans followed Diana, but when she died, I don't know how closely they were following, what the Queen was doing after that, or what Charles was doing, or Camilla, or any of these people. So I don't think they understood the two shit.
Yes. And I can also imagine that Harry didn't quite realize what it might be like for an outsider. And then on top of that, it's got to be so different once you're actually living it day to day, right? Like, he can only warn you so much. You can only read up so much, but then having to go through it day after day, no thank you. Like, what are you doing all day even? What was she doing? What could she be doing? I don't get it.
I think it was really boring. I think that's one thing. Before you have kids in the royal family, I think your life is very dull. Like, yes, you can go to a lot of engagements, which is what Princess Anne does. She's just the patron of everything and it never stops. But if that's not what you're going to do, then you, I think, have a lot of time where I guess you're like, I've already done the Peloton twice today. What do I do now?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, what's your job? There's not much. And wasn't that one of the things that drove Diana a bit nuts? So, like, I don't know.
Yeah. So things finally came to a head when Meghan was pregnant with son Archie. As is more common than most people believe, Meghan Markle developed suicidal ideation while pregnant. In 2021, she told Oprah, I was really ashamed to say it and to admit to Harry because I know how much loss he has suffered. And she also said that I knew if I didn't say it, that I would do it, and I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Wow.
And that was very clear and real and frightening constant thought. Harry later spoke about his reactions to his wife's mental health struggles in the Netflix docuseries, and he basically said, quote, I didn't deal with it particularly well. I dealt with it as an institutional Harry as opposed to husband Harry. And what took over my feelings was my royal role. I'd been trained to worry more about what are people going to think if we don't go to this event. We're going to be late. He just seems like a really terrible husband.
To me, yeah, this is such a shocking reaction. Like, the woman that you love tells you she's thinking about killing herself, and you immediately gravitate towards institutional Harry. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that. I find that quite telling and really distasteful. Watching the Oprah special, I cried when she said this. First of all, it's so striking that she's going through this after what Diana went through. And then on top of that, let's say this did happen. Like, this would be so horrific, and it would be such a dark mark on the fucking institution. A lot of people, of course, British naysayers, thought this was BS, but I think it's deeply, deeply understandable, actually, with how much shit she was going through and what they were saying about her. I wouldn't be surprised if I felt the same way in her shoes. And then his reaction just makes it worse.
Yeah, he seems like the worst. I mean, and we now have another, like, obviously Prince William has done a lot of things that I disagree with, but when Kate Middleton was diagnosed with cancer, he did actually, without explanation to anyone, skip some royal events. And at the time, people had all sorts of crazy theories, but he did in that moment put his wife and his family first and was there for her. He didn't say, oh, but I have to be at this funeral or I have to be at that event. He just was a husband and a father first in that moment. And I don't know if he learned from Harry's mistakes or he just is a more sensible person. This is why I really don't like Harry. I just feel like everything he does, even the institution is not asking to do that, right? I think that this is just his weird interpretation because, yes, it's a restrictive institution, but he seems to think that he can't do anything to help his wife. If he doesn't seem to think he has any agency until they eventually leave. And that's part of what really anchors me. It's like, call a psychiatrist, get your wife some help.
Yeah. And also maybe give her a hug, give her some empathy. Like, Jesus Christ, are you not horrified? And then at the same time, I'm like, he's just dumb.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. I think he's a bit slow on the uptake and he just can't think his way through problems. I don't think William's a genius, but I think he has more common sense. He's like, oh, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. I'll just cancel the event. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Problem solving. Okay. So Meghan and Harry slowly started rebelling against the House of Windsor. And so Megxit kind of first starts as a little bit of a whimper. When Archie was born, he wasn't given a title. And this is actually customary for the Spears children. William and Kate's kids got titles from the start because their dad will be king one day, right? So they kind of always have to have titles. They have to get used to it, right? It's just a different role. But the Spears kids do not usually receive titles until their grandfather or grandmother, their grandparent, ascends to the throne, right? And Charles, when the kids were born, was still the Prince of Wales, right? So it is very possible that had Prince Charles already been the regent when Lilibet and Archie were born, that he would have given them titles. But some children of the monarch actually don't even want that. That's not always the preference. Princess Anne, for example, refused titles for her children. She didn't want them to have titles, which I actually think is kind of cool. Anyway.
What is the reasoning, though? Like, do we know why she didn't want it?
I think she just wanted them to be normal people. I think she just sort of thought that the institution was restrictive and she wasn't going to raise them like royals, so why give them titles? And her kids are very well-adjusted people. Like her kids have
we
turned
love
out,
Anne.
Anne's great. Her kids have turned out well. It was a sensible choice, right? I mean, I think she sort of had a sense of duty and thought, I'm not going to shirk my responsibility, but I don't want to give my kids this burden. And good for her.
That.
Yeah, good for her. Like, great lady. Anyway, so if you don't have a title, you also don't get royal protection. And I'm conflicted about how I feel about this because I know Harry and Meghan thought, well, we want our son to have protection because we're famous and he's famous, and so protection would be helpful. But also they get protection. So given how old the Queen was and how Archie's probably going to get a title when Charles became king. I'm like, for when he's a baby, isn't he really going everywhere you're going? Does he need extra protection if you have protection? That's why I'm not sure why this was such a sticking point. And I don't want to judge them because I do get it, right? It is scary to be in the public eye and then to have a baby and to worry, like, what if someone's going to hurt my baby? Even if you're not famous, you worry about that. So I totally get it. But I actually don't know. I think maybe it just needed to be explained to them a little bit better why this wasn't happening. And I think part of it might have been Harry's entitlement. And if he was the one explaining things to Meghan, I think he comes off in Spear as kind of entitled, right? And so I think he didn't explain. My theory is maybe he didn't explain it properly about why certain things were done. Because this is all taxpayer money. The protection is paid for by taxpayer money. So if the royals start spending too much taxpayer money, the institution doesn't survive, right? It doesn't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like at the time I thought, I guess I just didn't understand it, I'm realizing, because at the time I thought, okay, maybe they mean this because they want him to have it for life, like as he gets older. But of course, that wasn't the case, especially I realized this when they cut ties with the royal family. But maybe it was also a symbolic thing where it was like, oh, are you not acknowledging our son by not giving him security detail? I wondered if that was it too. Because that definitely felt like a bit of a sting. Like I remember realizing that and I was like, oh, that's kind of shitty. Because even if he doesn't have a title, he's still who he is. And this family, this new little family, was more in the press than anyone at the time. So I did think it was kind of wild. But if you really think about it and you really break it down, it didn't really mean anything, did it?
Yeah, I don't know. And yes, I'm of two minds about it. So I think that one's pretty complicated, that controversy.
Yeah.
So whether you believe Archie should have had a title from the beginning or not, Meghan told Oprah something truly alarming in their 2021 sit down. In it, Meghan reveals that before Archie was born, there were concerns and conversations over how dark his skin would
Ugh.
be. She would not say who instigated these conversations. And Meghan also said they were between another person and Harry. And I'm sure these racist comments were made. I also just want to say she's hearing this from Harry. And so I don't know how well he remembers like Harry just seems like he's very slow. But I am sure the racist comments were made. I just wish she was the original source rather than broken telephone and she could tell us exactly what happened, because I just don't know how well Harry interprets conversations.
Well, the funny thing is I would imagine that Harry would water it down regardless, like just because of his simple mind.
Well,
the fact that he's
yeah.
so deep in royal bullshit. So I imagine if she'd heard it, probably would have been so much worse.
Harry and Meghan took their son Archie on an official royal tour. The tour was later turned into an ITV documentary called Harry and Meghan, An African Journey. The trip included stops in South Africa, Malawi, and Angola. While being interviewed for the doc, journalist Tom Bradby asked Meghan if she was okay, which is, a nice thing. You probably should ask postpartum mothers. And actually, not just in Meghan's case, most postpartum mothers don't really get anyone asking them how they are. It was apparent how lonely Meghan felt in her new role when she said, "Not many people have asked me if I'm okay." That was a moment of sadness, I think, that a lot of us really recalled a few months later in the winter of 2020 when what was dubbed Megxit began.
This moment made me cry, Sarah. Like, I remember that. She looked so sad.
She did look sad.
It broke my heart.
Having had a baby, I could say that's like how 90% of moms feel, that like no one's asking them how they are. And I had a baby during COVID, so it's a little bit different. Maybe my experience was more isolating than others because literally no one was there. But I mean, I'm sure it's heightened when you're living in a foreign country and this press is writing nasty things about you and you have security threats. So obviously her situation was worse than most people's situations. I do think it's also a very relatable moment, though. I don't think there are many women out there who've had a baby who when you ask them, okay, how are people looking after you? I don't think many women will say, "Oh yes, I feel very looked after." Like every woman I talked to before I gave birth, who'd already given birth, said, "People do not look after the mother. You've had a trauma, you've had this physical ideal, and people will treat you like shit." And that is true in 90% of the cases. So this is a very relatable sentiment, and it's partially to do with being a duchess, and it's partially just like this is how moms get treated.
Yeah, we don't talk enough about how pregnancy and giving birth is traumatic to the mother and her body at all. How soon did this tour come after? Do you know?
It was a few months later, I think. Yeah, it is soon. It is soon. But they make them go back to work quickly. And if she'd stayed in America, a thing people pointed out was mat leave was shorter there. So like it would have been worse there. And that's true. It doesn't make it right, but it's true. Like that's not a lie.
Wow.
Okay. So before Archie was even a year old, Meghan and Harry decided that they'd had enough of royal life in the UK. I cannot get into every detail of what was dubbed Megxit. You can read the Palace Papers for that. You can also read Omid Scobie's Endgame for his take. Basically, Harry and Meghan went on vacation to British Columbia and didn't come back. Right? They went away in November of 2019. And they just never turned off their out-of-office notifications. Allegedly, the nanny didn't even know where they were headed until the plane took off, which, if that is true, that is not cool. You have to tell your nanny where she's going. When I heard that detail, I was like, that's really uncool. But you can't
poor nanny.
Yeah, that is not fair to the nanny. Okay. And she doesn't even know what kind of time difference there's going to be, right? When it became clear Harry and Meghan would not return to royal duty, they were allowed to keep the title of Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but not to style themselves as HR. Diana got a similar deal. And they paid back the millions of dollars taxpayers had contributed to renovate Frogmore Cottage, which is fair. That's taxpayer money. While Harry and Meghan had initially hoped they might be able to stay in the House of Windsor and kind of move to a Commonwealth country representing the royals there, that unprecedented move just didn't appeal to the firm, which is what the palace is often called. And I kind of get that, actually. That's just like a new role. And we're in an era where we're trying to make the monarchy smaller, not bigger, right? We're
Right.
trying to contract, not expand. Doesn't seem like a good use of taxpayer dollars. Also, all these countries have diplomats, like actual UK diplomats. They don't need
Right.
fake
Right.
diplomats who are being paid to live there, right? Like, if you think about it.
That's
After the-
true.
Yeah. After the move, a flurry of publicity happened, including a snap at the Endeavor Awards in March of 2020, which was kind of the last engagement. They went in for one last job. And it's that iconic photo where they're under the umbrella together and it's raining and they're looking at
Yeah.
each other adoringly. And you do really see how much they love each other. The love seems authentic there.
Yeah.
The next year in 2021, pregnant Meghan, she's pregnant with her second child, sat down with her husband Harry and Oprah to discuss why they left the UK. So things got real, right? They came out swinging. And this is when I think Megxit starts feeling just sort of like maybe it'll blow over and you realize this is a real break. This is where Meghan got vulnerable and told everybody that she'd had suicidal ideation while pregnant. She told the world about the racist comments that had been made about her future children's skin color. And it received a lot of viewers. 17.1 million people watched the interview when it aired on CBS. Millions more watched it on YouTube and social media. And there was so much of an uproar. There were so many op-eds written about how the palace was retrograde that they actually had to issue a statement. And usually the mantra is never complain, never explain. But through the palace, the Queen released a statement. And the Queen's statement read, "The whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately." The statement also said that Harry, Meghan, and Archie will always be much-loved family members. So, Sadaf, what are your impressions of Megxit? Was this necessary? Do we think there could have been another compromise? What do you make of the palace's reaction?
No, fuck the palace. I thought this was such an incredibly moving and powerful moment. It was just huge. It was huge. I can't even believe it just happened a few years ago. This is the moment we've all been waiting for, isn't it? Like, we want to see an end to the royals in the way that they've been considered anything even remotely resembling authority or power in this world or in the quote unquote Commonwealth. And I feel like this was the first step because at this point, these two were the biggest, most notable faces, right, of the royal family. For them to pull themselves and then to move to America of all places and to essentially become celebrities in another way is just so fascinating. To have Meghan kind of be the one who's leading the way and then Harry co-signing. I thought it was just really, really powerful and amazing. I was so glad to see it. And I imagine that it took so much. I don't want to give him a lot of credit, but it takes a good chunk of bravery, I imagine, for Harry to do this because he's also disavowing his family, not just the institution, right? So that had to be tough. And you're doing it for your wife and your child. I don't know. I think the things that she shared, she probably didn't even tell us the half of what she was dealing with. And I hope she did tell Harry, and that's part of what went into their conversation. Although honestly, just the questions about the color of their child's skin was enough reason to be like, we're leaving. Like, that's still so foul to me. Even in the statement from Elizabeth where she says, while some recollections may vary.
I know. Well,
Liz,
Harry and Meghan,
come on.
Well, Harry and Meghan's post-Windsor life has been very interesting. The couple are now working people instead of working royals, and that transition has not been without struggles. Harry and Meghan inked a $20 million deal with Spotify. This led to Meghan's podcast Archetypes, which aimed to fire back at female stereotypes. Unfortunately, its ratings were not great. The deal between the Sussexes and Spotify was canceled in 2023. Harry and Meghan also secured a series of other business deals, including a very lucrative deal with Netflix. The $100 million contract led to the creation of a mini-series about the couple and Meghan's kind of weird lifestyle series, Love Meghan. I don't love it.
Yeah.
Netflix has chosen not to renew that contract either. This decision likely came down to performance. According to July 2025's engagement numbers, Love Meghan ranked third on the list of most watched programming for the first half of 2025 at Netflix. They were outranked by the likes of the Outer Banks. I'm sorry.
That doesn't shock me, though. Outer Banks is so popular, but wow.
Okay. I mean, Outer Banks is high up there. But, like, they were also outranked by, like, reruns of Gossip Girl, okay? So, like, what I'm saying is, like, people were not super into this show.
No.
Meghan has also launched As Ever, her lifestyle brand that insists it is, quote, more than a brand. It's a love language. They sell a lot of jam and wine. The wine is on brand because remember the TIG, right? That makes sense to me.
This all goes back to the TIG. Like, that's the life she wanted, and she's trying it out now, and I love that for her, even though I'm not into it personally. No, thank you.
Oh, she gets to be Goop now if that's what she wants.
Yeah,
and live your truth.
exactly.
Live your truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so the most controversial business venture was the Sussexes' Spare, and that was Harry's memoir.
Mm.
It's terrible. You can read it if you want. I don't think it's worth your time.
It's not
But
good.
regardless of what happens, obviously Harry and Meghan will always be fine financially, right? They're okay. You don't have to worry that they will go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Their business ventures haven't been all that successful, but they still have income, and they also, I mean, Harry has a lot of money from his mom. So it's all fine. As a couple, Harry and Meghan seem happy enough. Like all celebrities, they have faced the odd divorce rumor, but it looks like they are still living in a quite functional life in their $15 million Montecito, California estate with their son Archie and their daughter Lilibet, who was named for Queen Elizabeth. That was one of her nicknames. And
Smart too, that naming, by the way.
yeah, the Sussexes did attend Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee in 2022 and her funeral, which happened later that year. He also attended his father's 2023 coronation, but Meghan and the kids weren't there. Recently, Prince Harry saw his dad for the first time in 20 months when they sat down together in September. Charles has been battling cancer since early 2024. So, I mean, the distance actually could have consequences, right? It is very possible that they won't reconcile truly before Charles's death.
Yeah.
Sadaf, do you think this family feud will ever truly end?
God, it's hard to say. Listen, if it were me, no, because I think the way that the family treated Meghan is pretty unforgivable and really heinous. And if I were in this relationship and that was my family, I don't think that I could ever really forgive them. And listen, we don't know for sure who made the comments about the skin color, though rumors have flown it was Charles or it was William. I don't think it matters who. We just know it was someone in the direct family. And that to me is just so, I don't know, it's disgusting. Like, this is also going to be your own relative. I don't know. I really struggle with it. I don't know. Charles is also not somebody who I have a whole lot of empathy for in general. Sarah, how do you feel? Do you think they could ever make things work?
No, I don't think so. And I think the
Yeah.
sadder thing is the rift with his brother. I do think any rift with your father is
Yes.
sad. But, you know, Charles, your father, you don't expect to be a lifelong connection. You do expect to be able to spend pretty much your whole life if there's no tragedy with your
Yeah.
brother. And they were very
Yeah.
close as kids. And that's something that neither of their parents would want for them. Charles and Diana, whatever anyone thinks of Charles, Diana said he was a great dad. And I think he was a pretty good
Yeah.
father. And I think that probably breaks his heart more than anything. And I think it definitely, I don't see a way that they can reconcile. I just don't. I don't think Harry is capable of a mature conversation. And I think William doesn't seem to want to have one with his brother. I think he seems to have a lot of bitterness and issues. And like, listen, William's not telling his side because never explain, never complain, never explain. I don't know if there is a
Right.
side there. Like, I don't know. Right. And a lot of the conversations that were so damaging were between Harry and other royals. Meghan
Yes.
wasn't there. So some of it is like Harry has rage issues. So I know when you love your husband, you know, you assume that he probably is always appropriate. Who knows? Who knows, right? There's so much going on.
I mean, yeah, I never want to be in Harry's defense, but come on. I mean, we know, I feel like these things are worth his rage because, again, I don't, right? I don't think we're getting the whole story. And I
Yeah.
also feel like, because I second you that I think the real heartbreak is the brothers.
Yeah.
Especially after Diana, because they got so close after her death. So I think it's devastating. But I also think there's so much we don't know about what went down between these two. And maybe also Kate in some ways. I want the details so bad.
I know.
But there's a reason they're not talking. And there's a reason that they both clearly have resentment for each other. And I want to know so badly. But whatever it is, it clearly goes really, really deep. And I think it involves their wives.
Now it's time for Hindsight is 2025, where we choose the one moment that we would have handled differently.
I shouldn't have done that.
What would you have done?
I would have married Corey Vitello. I wouldn't have married Prince Harry.
Wouldn't we all, though? I think she wanted to. I think he didn't want to get married.
I think so too. Can you imagine that alternate universe?
I
My
know.
God. And who would have Harry ended up with? I don't know. Some white girl.
No one. I don't think he
Or
had
no
really bad
one.
luck in love.
I don't even know that he wanted to get married. That was always what I thought. I know you said that he allegedly wanted that. He wanted kids. I always just thought he did want to settle down, but I don't know. Sarah, what would you change?
I mean, if I'm Harry, and your pregnant wife says she's feeling suicidal, cancel an event, dude. We know it can be done. I think Harry should have tried harder in school. I mean, he had to literally cheat to graduate. And I think he could have learned some critical thinking skills that would have helped him with problem solving later on. And he would have become a better husband. I think he's a terrible husband.
Okay, can I add one thing to that then? Don't write spare. Why write spare? Don't put spare into the world.
Oh my God. You don't need it. You don't need it. Well, with that, this episode is over. We could have talked about this literally for 20 hours. Megxit will never truly be over. We can definitely do a sequel at some point.
No.
Okay, so thank you to all of our wonderful listeners. You can listen to more of The Reheat for free on the Seeker app. You can also find the show on the Frequency Podcast Network or wherever you get podcasts. If you want to hear more from us, you can also go to our Patreon at patreon.com/thereheat. We've got some goods in store for you. You can also find me on Instagram at Sahagian Sedef, where can listeners find you?
Listeners can find me at _Stephason on Twitter. And if you liked this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe so other listeners can find us too. It makes such a big difference. Thanks for listening.